So welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Tuesday, April the 20th, 2021. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And while we're waiting on Michael to get logged in, I'll go ahead and click on 513. I think 513, you're on the air.
Oh, I love it, but like how actually, I really need to turn my
They process really
513, you're on the air. Well, I think they don't know that they're that they're online.
Hello,
live,
area
so
code 513. You're on the air.
So they were having a conversation in the background, so I disconnected them. So maybe they'll call back in.
Okay.
So welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here with us as we move to the next step in this process of understanding and applying first century Aramaic forgiveness. A profound body of work exists that comes out of the first century Aramaic language. And for the last 40 or so years, I've been working specifically to decode that body of work and get it into the English language in its original form, in an accurate form. There have been lots of efforts to bring the words of the man named Yeshua into the English language. Sadly, most of those words were from the Greek translations of his words, and the Greek translations of his words just don't get it. The man didn't speak, read, write, think in Greek. The man thought in Aramaic, and it is a specific way of thinking that preserves the proper function of the human mind, so that we have the best possibility of entering into life with a perceptual system that tracks truth accurately. And, you know, many people think, well, I saw this happen, therefore that's the way it is, and have no idea that what they saw was a perceptual construct of their minds. And if the quality of their perceptual construct was poor, then they didn't have a clue about what had actually happened. All they had a clue of was the way that their mind constructed the event, which may have had little resemblance to the actual happening in the world. And we did a chapter from Why Is This Happening Again recently on blockage of truth and how when the mind tells us a lie, it fills the space that is available for perception with its lie, and then there's no room for the truth to get in. If the construct of our minds is a lie, and we call our mind's lie truth, and, you know, what's the most common lie on the planet? I was thinking about this the other day, and you think about how long people have been in denial and blaming someone else. You know, go back to the creation story. Who does the woman say is the problem? It was that serpent. And then you get to listen to, what did Adam say? That woman. You know, this is half of his blame game. That you gave me. He's talking to the Creator. So it's the woman's fault, and then it's the Creator's fault because the Creator gave him the. That's where the problem is. And they were the first examples of blocks of truth. So, you know, how long has that one been going on? So the most common lie is when we hold the belief that something outside of us is the cause of what's happening inside of us. So the minute that I say, you made me mad, you made me sad, you made me afraid, you frightened me, one is stuck in the lie. And what we're looking to do is to unwind the lie and bring our perceptual apparatus into line so that it is accurate and truly represents, at least as closely as possible, the actuality of what has happened. And we're going to move forward in the book. We're past that chapter on blocks of truth, and we're now in the arena of ancient wisdom. We're talking to this character, Richard, of ancient wisdom, and we're giving him examples, or we're starting to talk about the Aramaic language. And, you've probably heard me do this before, but one of my favorite little stories to tell when I'm talking about the Aramaic is about how, we were doing a workshop, and a fellow from Russia contacted us and said he wanted to come to the workshops, but he didn't speak any English. We know you as a friend, and you happen to be the best translator of English into Russian and Russian into English in the world. And so we asked if you would, mind translating for this fellow. In fact, we know that you've got an extra room in your house, and maybe you'd even house him. And you'd say, yes, of course, I'd be delighted. And at the end of the week, we've gone out to dinner with this fellow a couple of times, and it's been quite enjoyable. And I don't speak any Russian, but I really wanted to know what I think about him, so I ask you to tell him that I think he's really cool. And you turn to him in your very best Russian, and you tell him that Michael thinks he's got a low body temperature. Now, you translated exactly what I said, but you didn't say a word about what I meant. And that's the problem with translations. And so much of what appears in the ancient Aramaic is deeply, deeply idiomatic. When I say he's really cool, I'm speaking of an idiom. I don't mean anything to do with his temperature, which the word cool would imply. I'm talking about an idiom that we have. Cool means, he's good. He's a nice guy. We think he's, And so you can't translate an idiom. You just got to know what it means. And so much of the Aramaic language is idiomatic. So we're talking to Richard about this whole idea of the Aramaic language. And the last thought that I'd shared with him was that the Aramaic language encompasses the technology that's desperately needed to heal the insanities in our culture. The level of comprehension of human function that's represented in the Aramaic language is just beyond comprehension here. And so Richard's been very resistant to this because he equates anything to do with the ancient scriptures with religion. And so we're talking to him about, it's not about religion. Yeah, the religions address some of these ideas, but that doesn't mean that they own this core tool that we're representing here of forgiveness. So finally, Richard relents and he says, okay, you've got my curiosity, and so I'll listen. So I offer him the thought, once you go beneath the misinterpretations and grasp the original Aramaic thought structure in the scriptures, you'll experience a clarity that is profound. What today is called religion has its roots in solid, down-to-earth guidance. The original intention of religion was to create a community where it was safe and nurturing to live differently the insanity we humans had created in the world. A community that taught people how life worked and instructed people on how to achieve the best that life had to offer and process them through the world's insanity. Many religions still hold fast to that as their goals. There's an interesting example of this in a film. If you want to pick it up and watch it, it's very, very powerful, and it's entitled Homage Grace, and it's a true story. It's about a man who went berserk and went into a school. It was back in, 20 plus years ago. I'm not even sure what the time frame was, but he shoots a bunch of children in a school. And the Amish community offer solace to his wife and support to his family. And the world just can't relate to this. The demonstration of the principles of the Aramaic in this film are just monumental, like very powerful, and it shows how those guidelines can go astray. So if you want to watch a profoundly impactful film, watch the movie Amish Grace. And the scene that always comes to mind when I think about that film is that one of the men whose daughter was killed by this man goes with one of the elders of the Amish community to his wife's home. And the reality that the father who's there with the wife, who is just, of course, grief-stricken, perception this man constructs, seeing this elder and this man at the door, is just, oh, this is going to be terrible. These people are here to shred you and destroy you. And finally, she opens the door, and this man whose daughter is laying in a casket because of this woman's husband offers his condolences to her and support for her and her family over their loss, because the man then turned the gun on himself. And it's interesting because when that film came out, there were reviews online. There were people who made comments online, threats against these people for being so stupid. And I mean, just outrageous what some people in real time did around the actual event and then around the film coming out. And it's a demonstration of people who are actually working to live the principles that were taught that most people can't even start to conceive of. Actually being the space of love for your neighbor. It's interesting, in the Aramaic language, this is a powerful principle portrayed in the film. In the Aramaic language, the word neighbor means anybody that you think about. And in Aramaic, they didn't tell you, the man Yeshua did not tell people to love their neighbor. The word he actually used there was the word rachma. He said, have rachma for your neighbor. And rachma, turns out, is a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that is a gateway for love to show up in human form. So what he was saying is, when you think of someone, the way to preserve the sanity of your own mind is to maintain the state of rachma where love is present in you. That you don't get lost in hostility and fear and rage and guilt and grief and all of the non-human attributes that take human life away from us. And so here we are with a man who's actually efforting, while his daughter's body is hardly cold yet, that practice of having rachma for a suffering neighbor. And so we start to get some insight into the principles of the Aramaic in that film, and people's to actually live that principle. So I point out to Richard that many of the religions are still holding fast to that, but forgiveness is not the purview of religion. And so I asked him the question, do you recall hearing quotes from the scriptures like, do not judge by appearances, do not defile the temple, the wages of sin is death? He says, yeah, it never made a lick of sense to me either. When I was a kid, I heard hypocrites spouting that stuff all the time. Then they would do the exact opposite when they thought no one was looking. It sure turned me off, Richard said with disgust. And so we take ideas like, do not judge by appearances. What's the man saying there? When we go to the Aramaic, an appearance is a construct of the mind, a perceptual construct. And he's saying, just because your mind is telling you something, don't accept that as the truth. This is an instruction he's giving about how to treat your own mind. So don't get locked into your mind's perception, because if your mind is perceiving based on hostility or fear, your mind's telling you a lie. It's a brilliant piece of input. Understand that you've got a leg up on overcoming the insanities of the human mind, or I should probably say the non-human mind. Do not defile the temple. I mean, what does that mean? Don't go throw dirt in the church? No. The temple is your own body. Understand that your body is an energy system, It appears to be a physical thing, but in fact, if we look from the perspective of physics, and it took physics to have a lot of depth of insight into what the scriptures were saying, that your temple is an energy field, and there are energies that don't belong in it. Don't defile it. Don't put energies in. Hate, fear, rage, guilt, grief, trauma, and trauma don't belong in the human system, and if they're there, learn to forgive them. The wages of sin is death. Well, God's going to get it. Now God's threatening us. Well, that's the way a lot of the religions have presented it. But in fact, it's a teaching on physiology. The man Yeshua understood that relative to this human energy system, what appeared to be a human form, there were two qualities of energy. There was that which built the system up and that which tore the system down, integrative and disintegrative energies. When we engaged in disintegrative energies, the energy system began to break down. So the result of engaging in energies that are off the mark is that you would die. It had nothing to do with being punished. It was simply, here's how physiology works. So when you get back to the Aramaic, you've got a whole different way of perceiving and constructing your worldview. You've got one that can help to lead your mind toward truth, or you've got one that buys into the lies of your culture and your family system and perpetuates suffering. The man Yeshua was here to teach people how to put an end to suffering, not to perpetuate suffering, not to jump on board with him and go suffer with him. He went through the worst they could apply, came out the other side and said, okay, now you got it? It has had no impact on me. And to the worldly mind, that makes no sense because people don't have the brain cells to understand the truth that was being spoken of. And what we're looking to do with this work is to restore our minds and the perceptual system of each mind, to give people the tools with which to be restored to the truth of who we are. And so that's why we're here. And we're on task with the process, working to take it to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. Delighted that you're here to be part of the conversation. Appreciative of the fact that you introduce others to these principles as you start to learn them. And in fact, one of the mechanisms for strengthening your learning of the tools is to teach them. And so we're here to support that as well if it's your place to do that. And so, Ms. Jeanie, do we have that hand up again? And or is there anything happening in the chat room?
No, Bob is with me from Australia. And
well,
the
we
chat
were
room.
asking about you the other day, Bob. Glad to see you're here. At least I was asking. Wondering how you're doing. Hope all is well in your world.
Yeah.
Go for it, Jean.
Nobody's hand is up. Just to share just a little bit of what happened with me last night.
Yeah, let's go for it.
You know, I had just shared yesterday about the awesome breath session and actually getting to the point of feeling just my energy and seeing things as they truly are and not, solid or real and feeling that intense space of just being. And then last night, just out of the blue, it was like this dark cloud just came over me. Michael kept asking, if there was anything that he could support me with. And I said, there was nothing to tell. I didn't have any thoughts. And I figured I was just tired. And because we had the baby for, 26 hours or something like that. And I said, I'm just figure I'm tired. And then I had a very restless night and woke up this morning and was sharing with Michael my dreams and that I was given the insight that what was going on last night was just this great depression and just deep, dark depression. And when, back a few years before I ever met Michael or knew this work or anything, I had gone through a stage of depression for several years and actually had gone to the point where they put me on Paxil during the day and Ambien at night so that I'd stay calm in the day and sleep at night. And so it was kind of like that energy was moving back out. So I had reached a high point so that I could go into the depths of a dark point and process it, and really processed it through the night, because woke up this morning fine. So, Michael, you want to add to that?
Well, it was clear that your energy system, which had been so attuned when you were breathing and so vital, that something was going on. I think I asked you 3 or 4 different times, what's happening? Share with me, honey. Talk to me. What's going on? And it was just obvious that Jeanie was in process. And then, by making the request and breathing through the night, she got the insight that this was a layer of that old depression that she had been. I mean, she'd been on medication for. We've been together 17 years now, hon. And prior to that, she had been on medication for about a year and came off of it when she started to do this work. And I really learned a very powerful lesson from being part of this process with Jeanie. And what became really clear to me, and I've watched it happen over and over again and didn't really have the brain cells for it. And, with the fact that we've been both at a new level of process in our own work, just a whole new understanding came forward for me. And that is that, and it actually instructed me or gave me an understanding of why in, let's say, for instance, in the East, India and such, you're required to have a guru. And I see the validity in that now, because each time a new depth, and it might just be doing a worksheet and you just get a new level of vitality, a new level of aliveness, and it's like, wow, that was so cool, a new experience of the presence of love. And what happens is each peak experience that we have requires, if you're going to maintain, it requires that you really truly be committed to do your work, because there's a danger in that experience of that new level of functioning as the presence of love. And that is that a new level of vitality means new depth of unresolved dynamics becomes available. So each time you hit a new level of awakeness, of aliveness, you have the ability, or actually your physiology is going to do this automatically, it's going to start to serve up, start to resonate or bring to the surface the next depth of what needs to be healed from your generational patterns. So that becomes available. And to maintain access to the new level of love and aliveness that you've reached, got to work through what's been loosed by that level of vitality. Elsewise, you run the risk of the newly available unresolved associated content becoming the new root of the perceptual output of your mind and becoming the new norm for your view of the world. And I've watched that happen over and over and over again. And the insight that I got as to why they called for a guru in the East was because the guru knew better. The guru knew, and you weren't allowed to project on the guru. You look at someone who goes to a new vitality level, new depth of hate or fear or rage or anger comes up, and whoever's in their face, they'll tend to blame it on. And they'll start to tell a story about that other person. Well, if it happens to be their teacher, and I've seen this happen. In fact, I was sharing with Jeanie with this intensive that we're doing online. There's been a lot of really powerful work done, and there are 2 people in the intensive that have gone through exactly this. So their process has actually helped me to understand this principle, and it'll probably end up being part of my next book, because I've got a whole written record of their new level of vitality, new excitement, new aliveness. Boy, this is so great, Michael. And then once that new level settles down, new depth of pain and trauma comes up, and the projected stories and oh, woe is me, I'm going to quit, I'm finished, I'm done, don't want to do this anymore, and the tendency to get locked in that loosed pain that became available because of the new level of aliveness. And so if you weren't allowed to make up stories about the guru, you just had to trust the guru, then you didn't turn that story on the guru, make it his fault, and puke on him and walk away, which is what I've observed people do over the years. And so that the danger of the new level of access to what needs to be processed out becoming the norm or the construct out of which you view your life is a danger in the healing process that I've seen people, you've heard me say this before, I've seen it take people 10, 15, 20 years to come back to the work after, brushing it aside. I've had enough of this, finding something wrong with somebody and then running away and coming back again. One gentleman, as part of his healing crisis, he had been engaged in the work 20-some years ago, and all of a sudden, after some really exciting openings and really getting a handle on some things, became very despondent, and I'm out of here, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. And part of supporting him to get back on track was sharing with him that, well, you remember 20 years ago when you left this work and it took you 20 years to come back? Well, please make the time shorter this time. And it was just a matter of a couple of weeks. He was like, oh my God, the trap I almost fell into. So all of those pieces together, thank you to those folks who went through that. And Jeanie, just, thank you for being willing to stay open and keep moving through things and to share what was going on with you, and to really do the piece of work that that new level of vitality that you hit this weekend opened for you. And I just offer that as an understanding for everyone to recognize that it goes, with the ancient scriptures, they talked about strength to strength, here a little, there a little. And in fact, I do address this in my book, The End of Suffering, that I'm on, but it's kind of been dormant for 20 years or so now, or well, not quite that long. It's about 17 or so. But the character in that book is being instructed by Yeshua, and that passage from the scriptures come up, here, there, here a little, there a little, with stammering lips and another tongue will I speak to you, which is reportedly about the Creator. And the character says to Yeshua, well, why would God do that to us? Why would God speak with stammering? And Yeshua says, no, stop. Remember the game of projection. Remember blame. It was the woman that you gave me that was the problem in the garden. Remember the blame game. And so Yeshua points out to him, no, that's just humans. And now they're blaming God for speaking in a foreign tongue. It's we, he says, who are speaking, or listening with foreign ears. Yeah, we want to blame the Creator for it. Why stammering lips and another tongue? It's really stammering ears. Our brain cells are misinterpreting out of old dynamics, and therefore we just get a piece at a time, a piece at a time, a piece at a time. And sadly, sometimes people, if something's triggered, will get stuck in, and it might have been something that happened to them. Well, as Jeanie said, this was 17, 18 years ago. Paxil and Ambien. We're going to wake you up with a drug. We're going to put you to sleep with a drug so that you don't have to feel what's real for you. And Jeanie worked through many layers of that, and the next depth of that happened just this past weekend, and it was very, very profound, very powerful, and is really, if you've got the eyes to see and the ears to hear, a really deep, profound piece of work to understand and move forward with. So, Jeanie, thank you for your willingness, your intensity, your integrity with your process. It's an honor and a blessing to be a part of it. Yeah.
Your microphone just muffled about 10 seconds ago.
Okay. Is that better?
All right. It is much. And Bob is actually in queue online. Go for it, Bob.
Oh, great. Let's say hello to the young man. What's happening in your world? You were on my mind the other day, and I asked if you were around. You said, no, you weren't in. So good to hear from you. What's exciting in your world?
Well, ever since I took complete responsibility for my life, I am master and commander of this life. And my life is awesome because I create it that way. But I'd just like to share on the topic of depression, which is my own personal field of expertise. And what I'm sharing is the result of 36 years of living with it and also researching it. And this is just my own personal story, but I won't take too long.
Right.
Me, where I am now, I believe that we are all Sioux, that we're all sovereign, unique, and equal, and that's where I'm coming from. Now, I had my first panic attack in 1984, and Western medicine said, oh yeah, the experts on my life said, you've got a mental illness, take these drugs. And so I did, and I took them all over a period of 20, 25 years and realized that
Ouch.
every antidepressant I took turned me into another person that I didn't like. And then while I was going through this process, I developed a spreadsheet of all the antidepressants and all their effects, and there are no side effects. And they all had one common denominator, which was can produce feelings of anxiety, depression, and suicide. And that's when the light bulb went off, and I thought, well, this is a no-brainer.
Like,
they don't
hello?
want cures, they want substance. Yeah. And then I had another aha moment, was because of my abusive childhood, I'd swallowed all of that pain, and so what was really what I really noticed about when I had that panic attack was I was overwhelmed by the feelings that were within me, and so by taking the medication, they detached me from those feelings. So that was good, for the initial stages. But then I realized that the immense power of the feelings that I was having was nothing wrong. It was just a measure of how truly powerful I am as a living spiritual human being. And so I allowed all those trapped feelings to vomit out. Luckily, I was on my boat, So I threw the medications away and went to hell and back 2 or 3 times a day for a couple of weeks, and I allowed all those feelings that I'd swallowed, all that terror, all that pain that from my childhood. Also, I did formally go back and heal into my childhood, and came to the realization that depression, and there are no gurus for me. Where my guru resides in my heart, in my intuition. But I just came to realize that I am the only expert on my life, and so now my life is awesome, and I love listening to what you guys are doing because although your process is different to mine, the end game is the same, and a lot of the steps you're taking, it's like, I'm intuitively already doing that. So that's why I love listening in, because for me, what I have here, what I call is a heartfelt connection with family, because we're all here to lift each other. So for me, there is no such as mental illness. And I'll quickly give an example to demonstrate that. Well, 2 quick examples. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the biggest sin that a loving human being can commit is to take the life of another person or witness that. That's the biggest wound that souls carry. Yeah. And so, if you allow your programming to overrule your inner knowing, your inner moral compass, and you go and kill somebody, then there is a price to pay. And that price is the pain that is manifested in the physical world because of what you've done to your spiritual side. You've just totally kicked your heart into the bin and just lived your programming. So that for me is the cause of PTSD. It's not mental illness. It's the price you have to pay. And there is a way to heal that, And then ADHD is another one. It's so obvious. It's so simple. When I was a kid, I was buzzing, I was running everywhere. I didn't want to sit for 3 or 4 hours in a classroom, So if they redesign the education system to do all the physical education in the morning and get the kids worn out, then maybe they would sit quietly in the classroom in the afternoon. Stop denying our nature. That's what the system is doing.
And create a safe environment where they didn't have to keep on in a defensive mode, waiting for the next attack to come.
Oh yes, all playgrounds are so. They were. I was getting more abuse at school than I was at home, and home was bad enough.
Brutal. Yeah.
Mum sent me to school as a 5-year-old. She was a German refugee, and this is in England. She sent me to school as a 5-year-old with a crew cut dressed in lederhosen. So I was the crap in the playground. So I got the crap beat out of me at school. I said, Mum, can't I just have a normal school uniform? No, you're a good German boy. I said, no, I'm English.
Right. A German boy in England after World War II. Whoa.
Whoa, yeah. It wasn't. Hey, every step I have ever taken, however painful, has brought me here to contentment. My life has been blessed, and it's been a journey of exploration and a journey of finding out who I truly am. So I've got no regrets. So thank you for letting me share.
Sweet. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for being a poster boy for listening to the inner teacher, which is what we're here to support everyone making contact with, because we'll be led to individually what each individual needs by that inner tutor that is there to guide us all. So,
yeah, well,
nice work, my friend.
What I found is I have found all my own solutions. That's SOUL, solutions at the bottom.
Got it.
Yeah, I found all my solutions in my heart, because for me, the mind is always looking for answers, but the heart already knows. Okay. Thank you.
All right, my friend. You have a blessed one. Lots of love. Awesome. Well, Miss Jeanie, that was very powerful, profound. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. So do we have anybody out there with a hand up in the phone queue?
No, we don't. And we have 21 minutes, so we've got plenty of time for a conversation. Press 1.
So if you're out there in this land, now's the time to press 1 and let's have a conversation. The objective of this work is to open a space to support and bring healing ultimately to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. Reconnecting with Source, reconnecting with the presence of love that we are, and working through the insanities that the mind has been brainwashed with. So undoing the brainwash, stepping back into the truth of who we are. And, oftentimes people will see someone out there that has a problem, and the problem matches the one in their own mind, so they'll start puking their rage and their fear on that person out there as though, for some reason, that person deserves what's in my mind, to have it piled on them. And, the truth is, if you see someone who has a problem, someone who doesn't have the light functioning in them, give them your light, as opposed to puke on them with the unresolved energetic dynamics that they're arousing for you. And when we become those who bring solutions to the world, when we bring active present love to the world, then an important part of the healing process is accountability. And so being able to stand straight and tall and confront the insanity of the world, and if there has been abuse or what have you take place, to be able to confront that is an important part of the healing process. And so our whole objective here is to create support for every mind, heart, and being on the planet confronting every bit of hostility and fear, bringing truth forward, and in the presence of active love, healing. So if you're out there in listener land and you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, if you pick up your phone and dial 563-999-3581, you'll be listening to the show on your phone. And then, if you push 1, that'll raise a hand in the phone queue, and we'll be having a conversation. How can we support you? What's going on in your world? What's happening in your process? You have any questions on using the tools? And if you haven't put the pen to the paper yet with the forgiveness process, you can go to our website, whyagain.org, whyagain.org. First word and the last word of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again.org. And when you get to the homepage, if you push the button up in the left corner that says Start Here, it'll walk you through the whole series of tools. Here's how you apply forgiveness, and it'll just walk you right down through the whole works, right down to radio shows where we have explained the whole forgiveness process, step-by-step worksheet. You can download the worksheets and print them from the website. You can actually do the worksheet live on the website, print and keep a record of your work there. And or you can also go to the App Store in your phone, and there you will find the world's only forgiveness app. And if you type in the words Heartland, that's one word, Heartland. Second word, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. You'll be looking at the world's only forgiveness app created by Jeanie. And there are 2 different versions of the worksheet there, a simplified form and then the complete current version of the worksheet. So you can do them right there on your phone. And the app is designed to have, absolute minimal permissions required. All it needs is permission to use your internet signal in order to function. And that's it. No access to your camera or your text or your contact list or, any of that. And then it'll ask for one more permission if you do a worksheet and you decide you want to save it. We suggest you do save a record of your work. Then it's going to ask to be able to write to the drive. But other than that, no permissions are required. We purposely designed it that way so that it would be as private and you would be able to trust it. Put anything you want into that app and know that it's secure. So take the tools, put them to work, and we're here for support. And if you have any questions, if you look at the conversation that's unfolded so far, I can only imagine there are many listeners that are scratching their heads going, well, wait a minute, how does this, or that work? If Jeanie and I had been in your hometown this week and we were doing this workshop in your local library or your local university or your local church or prison or whatever, as we walked down off the platform and we'd had the conversation we've had so far today, you'd walk over to Jeanie or you'd walk over to me and you'd say, but what about, or I just have a quick question. So right now we've got about 16 or so minutes for your quick question. All you have to do is push 1 and we'll be having a conversation. How can we support you? What's on your mind? 563-999-3581 if you're on one of those stations we can't see. Dial in, push 1, and ask the question. And I can't imagine with the conversation we've had, the details that we've spoken about, that there aren't several people out there wondering about what to ask or what's going on. Sometimes people, get a little nervous. They're like, well, I'd be on the radio, my voice would be shaky. Can you make it okay for your voice to be shaky? Just go ahead and push one and let's have a conversation about what's on your mind. Or I don't know what question to ask. Whatever question's on your mind is the perfect question to ask. There's no right or wrong question. And in fact, sometimes, if you're new to this work, sometimes your new questions can be profound for even the most advanced students of the work, because you open up thought processes and dynamics that otherwise people have never gone near. So that's one of the beauties for me, for Jeanie and I, of this show, is that we get to engage in the questions of people from all walks of life. Our intensive right now, we've got, we have a young lady from Hawaii. We've got a gentleman from Sweden. We have a young lady from Thailand, and just about every corner of the United States. So we get to intersect with and interact with a broad cross-section of people, and the questions that come forward are just so powerful and so profound. So we'd love to hear your voice. We've got about 14 minutes left for that to happen. So if you push one, we'll be having a conversation. What's on your mind? And I can't believe with the subject we've covered that there isn't somebody with a question out there.
Going back to, you were talking about Amish Grace, and that was actually a movie made in 2010, but the actual event happened in 2006. And one of the lines that really stood out for me in that movie, there was one of the women who actually lost two of her daughters. They asked her, well, how can you continually, how can you forgive? How can you let go of what he did? And she said, sometimes I have to do it, and I forget the number, but it was like, sometimes I have to do it 30 times a minute until it's complete. And we had a hand just go up. So area code 828, you're on the air.
Hi there, this is Martha.
Hi there, young lady. Welcome.
Thank you. I just want to take a minute and then leave the rest of the time for somebody else. And what I want to say is thank you so much for pointing out what you have already said before, and thank you for pointing it out again, that when we reach a new level of vitality, then we might drop into what we think is as if everything's ruined. That's the way I experienced it recently. And I didn't realize that that's what happened. I was on top of the world. Oh, my goodness. Everything is great. I think I've mastered my life. I've learned all I need to. And that went on for 2-3 days. And then, wow, suddenly I was down and feeling, really almost depressed about life and my being here and so forth. So it didn't last very long, but it certainly did occur. And I love the idea of just writing it out. I'm not sure. I think that's what you said, Jeanie. If you can remember what you said, would you please repeat it?
I don't remember.
It's really all of the above. It's keep using the tools so that the new depth of healing that has surfaced, the new thought disorders, the new, whatever it is that you're ready to deal with on the next level, is to keep applying and doing your work so that that new level of process doesn't become the norm for you. And that's what I think happens for people who don't have the kind of support or the kind of wherewithal to realize what's happening, is they then get stuck in that. That then becomes, and I've seen it take people, a decade or more. Mm-hmm. They go into that funk, that healing crisis, not realizing it's a healing crisis, not continuing to do their work. They get stuck in it, and that becomes the new set of their minds, rather than recognizing the pursuit is to keep Rahma active in my mind, to keep love present in my mind, and processing through every layer that comes up in response to it. So there's a real trap there and a danger.
Indeed. As a matter of fact, now that we're talking about it, when was it? A week and a half ago, when we did the responsibility communication with the group.
Right.
And that was so powerful for me, and also tiring, emotionally and physically tiring, that I'm glad that I did it, that we did it. And I realized that I haven't gone back. I did go back one time and listen to part of it. And there's so much more that I plan to do in the future about listening and taking notes and learning how to realize what my words are conveying and say it, are actually reconstructing the thoughts so that I can say it the way it needs to be, in a loving way, and a non-blaming, responsible, self-responsible way. So, I really backed off. Week and a half.
Yeah, I hear. I understand that, and I just, really got a whole new level of clarity with that just in the last few days with the process that Jeanie's been going through, and we both have been going through, because we've been both doing an accelerated amount of work. And in terms of the responsibility communication, one of the pieces that I plan to share in the class tomorrow night, or when we come back together, and perhaps do another extra session in the intensive base in this, is that where there's a lie, the simplest lie, you made me, there's blockage of truth. Mm-hmm. Where there's blockage of truth, there's blockage of love, which means there's a disease. When the truth is told, love is present. We can bring love present then. And that any shade of you made me, the most common lie on earth, blocks love and therefore blocks healing, creates a void. And going through each layer of that's a major piece of work. Major piece of work. So.
Yes. And what's so remarkable to me is that I had such a difficult time seeing it. I heard it. I understood what you were saying, and I couldn't see that blaming thing was going on in the way I characterized it and described situations.
Well, and the mind is so skillful at integrating its root constructs into the world we think we see out there, and never realizing that it's really just reflective of the world that's in here. And to gather that insight is monumental. Right.
Yeah, my mind is definitely a trickster and wonderfully creative. And when I apply it to honestly taking responsibility, it will be such a delight. And it's going to be, I believe that it may take me a while to turn that page, and a lot of practice. And like something happened the other day. Chuck and I were going somewhere in the car, and I don't know. He had a change in the tone of voice when he either answered or asked something, and I got triggered. I felt triggered, and so I said, "Well, honey, I'd really like to practice, and you're so good at seeing whether I'm being responsible or not in my communication. Could we could I say this in what I hope is a responsible way, and please check me on it. And so we agreed to do that. And we had an interesting conversation about how to describe it. And a question we ended up with was, first of all, I guess, is it really necessary? If it's an occurrence that it just happened, do I need to say, when I heard you, or when I heard your voice change? Do I need to say that at all? Because that's giving
well, and of course,
right.
that may well be another statement of projection, because the voice might not have changed at all, even though I may have perceived it. So perhaps more accurately would be to say, I perceived a change in your voice, and what that brought up was, and I'm back to responsibility, rather than when you changed your voice.
How
bringing back everything.
Oh, my God. Oh, Lordy. Thank you. Yeah, that was really simple. It was just a step over to the other direction. Just a step, but a big step.
Yep.
Thank you.
You know, David Bohm, you've heard me quote him often, and there was an article he was quoted in the New Scientist, and he says, the ability to perceive or think differently is more important than the knowledge gained. Is to change this transparent projection machine to where it gives us factual information instead of making up a whole world based on the past.
Yeah.
And its ability to trick us is unlimited.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you say, our training has been pretty solid. So learning to think it differently and say it differently is just a new skill to be learned. And,
yes.
I'm going to go there.
Thank you for your willingness. All right. We appreciate you and cherish you, young lady.
And you. And everyone out there who's listening. Bless you all. Okay, thank you, dear. I'll listen.
Okay. All right. Blessings. Take care. Bye-bye.
So we're down to a minute and then the closure.
Well, time flies when you're having fun. We are honored and delighted for each of you to be with us in this conversation and moving forward and building the brain cells for a new way of perceiving, a new way of constructing our view of the world that is based on a mind linked to love rather than based on a mind linked to hostility or fear. When the power supply changes, everything the mind does changes. If the mind is based in defensiveness, hostility, or fear, if that's its root set, then we're in trouble. When its root set is Rachma, and in the Aramaic, Rachma is the set of the mind, when that is the root set, then the mind, based in love, starts to flow into information that is accurate and true rather than projection of the past. So thanks for being with us. Have a blessed rest of the day, and we'll look forward to seeing you in tomorrow's show. Blessings. Bye-bye.